Hi, welcome back to the Combo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here today, Han Solo, but wait, I do have a surprise co-host coming in. Hopefully she can get her stuff straight and come on in. I think if you saw the thumbnail, you'll know who it is, Misty Winston. She should be in shortly. Hopefully everything will work on out, but Fiorella is on assignment today. So this is going to be a short, lovely kind of like Swift show. Just want to do something on a Friday. Didn't want to leave you out there alone and dry with no combo couch, guys. Thank you so much to everybody who's watching today. Do us a favor and share it on out there. Many people haven't come through the door yet, a little bit behind. I guess it might be a little bit of a different time, a little bit earlier than normal. But yeah, Combo Couch is here, is rocking. If you're a premium member, you can go watch it over at Rockfed over there. That always helps us out. What's up to Jilly Love and everybody else hanging on out? I don't even see who's in the chat right now. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. Hugo, everybody else. Thank you guys for joining on in today. Do us a favor, share it on out. Misty Winston should be in shortly. So let's hope that works itself out. And we're also on Rumble too, as well. Guys, if you can share the Rumble. I don't know if this stuff is getting on out there. It is a little bit of a wacky Friday of sorts. But do us a favor, share it on out if you can, if you have time. That's the best way to help us out. We are completely powered by you. We haven't taken a dime. We will not take a dime of corporation money. They will never tell us what to say. And that's for both of my shows. That's for AM Wake Up. That is for Combo Couch. We are completely powered by the people. And what does that mean? Well, that means that we can do the work we want to do, the work that you put us in play to do. We always have all these fundraisers and whatnot for, here's Misty Winston, for all these different events, Action for Assange, F censorship. We go and we observe elections overseas. Little fuzzy, Misty.
I know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on.
It's okay. How you doing?
It's annoying. It's annoying. I get annoyed. It's annoying.
Well, you might be annoyed, but I am just, I really am happy today that you're here with me too as well, because you're one of my favorite people that's been involved in this fight. The stuff you've been doing for Assange, the human element. That's what I always love talking to you about. Like, there's a human element involved. And why don't you explain, even though you're a little frozen and fuzzy, are you there?
Can you hear me?
No, you sound like Megatron.
Dang it. I don't know what to do. It's so annoying. I don't know what to do. If my camera off, is it better? Is it better when my camera's off?
Yeah, now it's okay. Is it your internet?
My upload speed is garbage right now. I have fantastic internet, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you're still sounding like Megatron.
God,
why don't you do this? Why don't you pop out again, unplug your internet, plug it back in, come back on. What I'll do is I'll start the first section, which is the warmongering section.
Okay.
But I do want to make sure that we get a chance today to talk about this project you've been doing, or this little, I don't want to say it's a little project, but it's really, really important for people to understand what's going on, because when you told me about it, it just touched my heart. And it's just horrifying. And this is also the war machine. This is the empire, the way they're punishing Julian, because they don't want people to know what happens in our name, what happens behind closed doors, what happens overseas, what happens with the military, what happens with our government. And they want to make sure that Julian was punished and punished hard for speaking up, or for creating a system in which we can tell the truth to the people and let them know. So you unplug. I'll start with the warmongers be warmongering, and then pop back in, and I'll jump you back in, and we'll go from there. I actually cherry picked from Misty's from her Twitter today to go over the section Warmongers be warmongering, because we are doing this big rally. If you haven't heard, February 19th, Rage Against the War Machine. We're going to go out there. We're going to do our all to bring some attention to what's actually going on. What's happening in the Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very scary. And I don't think a lot of people realize how close we are to nuclear annihilation. I know I can't spell that word right, because I spelled it inhalation or whatever instead of nuclear annihilation, but we are close to that. I mean, the doomsday clock is the closest it's ever been to midnight. And that means all-out nuclear war. And how many times we've almost been faced with this, several times in the past. So if you get a chance, please stop by the Rage Against the War Machine page. If you want to donate to the cause, you can do that. But if you want to just donate directly to me, you can do so. You can go to my Venmo, which is at Craig Jardula. You can go to my Cash App, which is $Pasta Jardula, and help me there with the expenses. I'm going out there. I'm very fortunate, very lucky to be able to speak with such great speakers out there. Jimmy Dores are going to be there. Ron Paul, wow. Daniel McAdams, Dennis Kucinich, Tulsi Gabbard, Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampel, Scott Horton, Matt Ho. There's Jackson Hinkle who's speaking. There's me who's speaking. There's Wyatt Reed who's speaking. And I get it. If you don't like some of the people there speaking, fine. That's on you. You're not going to like everybody. The most important thing is that we put aside our differences. We put aside our ideology, and we come together to rage against this war machine. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, it's like Mike Gravel said, even if they eliminated all the missiles, those ICBMs, the ones that the Chinese spy balloon was flying over, the missiles that the United States has in the submarine force, the nuclear missiles that is, can destroy the planet 17 times over. We're at a very dangerous spot, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not. And I know that Americans are so oblivious to it and just going on with their every day-to-day life to think that this couldn't affect them. But it could. And we're asleep at the wheel because we never have to worry about missiles being dropped over our head right now. We don't have to be worried about being bombed. I mean, can you imagine what's going on in Yemen, in Syria, in the Ukraine, what went on in the Donbass for all those years? And it's all propagated, pushed, and planned by this war machine for many years now. It's their eugenics program, right? And who makes money hand over fist? The war machine. And they're at a point right now where we have zero friends in Washington, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a Democrat, a leftist, or a Republican. It doesn't make a difference. We have no friends in Washington. And if you're going to be one of those people going to say, well, they're floating a bill out there, we're going to talk about that, right? Because as soon as we stop looking at Ukraine, what are they looking at next? China. They just showed you their whole hand, ladies and gentlemen, over a balloon. Over a balloon, they went crazy. And we'll get into that. But if you have a chance, get out there if you can. My Cash App, my Venmo, every dollar helps. And thank you to everybody who's helped. I read your names the other day. I'll probably read your names at the end of the show. It means a lot. Because all I want to do is get out there and shine a light on this information. And I am just, like I said, humbled to be speaking with these people. These people have huge platforms. So if that amplifies the message of peace, if that message is the message of anti-war, and no out there, you guys don't get to define what anti-war is. Some of us want to hold our country accountable. Some of us believe that countries have a right to defend their borders. Some of us believe, plain and simple, that if the United States never propagated a war, if the United States never couped Ukraine in 2014, Russia wouldn't be in Ukraine now. And we honestly believe, some of us, whether you like it or not, the quickest way to peace is through a Russian victory, because we know from time and time again, from this country to that country, that the United States is not going to stop. Their objective is to have a war, not to win the war, not to lose the war, but to have the war. Because if they have the war machine makes money hand over fist. And they've said they're ready to fight to the last Ukrainian. Cy Hirsch, right? Seymour Hirsch just released an article about the Nord Stream pipeline. Again, another thing. It's this, that. The list goes on of what the United States imperialist arm has done to propagate war and to make sure they have a war in Ukraine, to bring us closer to World War III. So that's where we stand. If you want to get out there, please do. Come join us. Ladies and gentlemen, the Misty Winston. Still fuzzy.
Maybe. God damn it. Is it still bad?
Still bad. Well,
right.
Better, getting better.
Is it better?
Much better. Let me take down my Cash App and my little help pasta get to Rage Against the War Machine thing. I just had a little soliloquy over there talking about.
Yeah, I was listening.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on what's going on, and why this rally is necessary? Screw all the noise, Misty. Tell me why it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, the revitalization of the anti-war effort in this country is we're in a dire situation right now. I mean, we're currently trying to poke 2 different nuclear powers, not just one. We're already, in my opinion, in World War III. It's already happening. And there's no conversation, there's no question, there's no hand wringing about how are we going to pay for this. They just throw money at the military industrial complex, hand over fist. Nobody questions it. And then it's very frustrating to me that when people organize a rally, that it doesn't matter what the rally's for, whether it's Medicare for all, Assange stuff, anti-war stuff, there's always the same group of people who want to fling mud every single time. And it's so frustrating to me. I understand that there are people who have legitimate concerns about certain speakers or whatever. It's not about the speakers. It's not about the speakers. I don't care who the speakers are. I care about coming together in a massive group of people to send a message to the establishment that we're done with war. We're done. We're done. We're done. We're done. And I mean, I'm not a big fan of Jackson Hinkle. I don't care. I will go to the rally even if Jackson Hinkle is going to be there. I don't care if Jimmy Dore has a house. You know what I mean? Like, it's very frustrating that people spend so much effort trying to tear down movements rather than help to build them up. If you don't like this particular rally, then start your own. Yeah. We need more of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said the war movement's been non-existent. And I think that's really important to point out because Scott Ritter is no longer going to be speaking. He dropped out yesterday and he said he's going to take one for the team. And I've seen some people, but we'll take it. Like, you ain't taking nothing. This is just your narcissism over here, right? Like, this is about yourself. If you read his speech, it's truly amazing. And he's a hard voice to replace because we don't have many insiders, ex-Marines or ex-military personnel that have had a history of telling the truth and exposing the war machine for what it is. So that's why when he does a show with Garland Nixon, or he does a show over here, or he does a show with Kim Iverson or anything, the views are up through the roof because people, look about what he's done and his perspective. That's hard to replace. Whatever the case may be, he talked about the military industrial congressional complex. And this is something that's important because in my speech, there's going to be a point of realization that we have no friends in Washington. We have no friends whatsoever. We don't have any anti-war friends that are going to stick up for us, for we, the common people, and say, hey, enough is enough with propagating and pushing war. And whether you're a leftist, and now the conservatives are like, well, Matt Gaetz is floating this anti-end the Ukraine war. But guess what else happened? And we're going to go over this. They also, the Congress, the House, voted unanimously to label China's actions as hostile and against it. I mean, I know it's a resolution, but they're just showing you that they're all lining up for war. So as soon as they stop sending this money to Kiev, they'll shift it right to Taiwan to push back against Beijing. Let's not forget why some of us became Democrats in the first place. Me, myself, was during that whole Scott Ritter time in Iraq when it seemed like the Democrats were the only reasonable voice because the Republicans and George W. Bush were just outlandish to push their war. Now, I learned that you can't just look at the president and make your decisions there. You got to look at what's going on in Congress. And back in the days, I saw Joe Biden on the floor of the Senate propagating and pushing for the war. I might have thought differently. But that's why I became a Democrat at one point, because of war. So I'm not going to forget the history that's just not too far in the past, because I think the conservatives are, excuse my French, Misty, have a hard-on for war with China.
Yeah, you think? Yes.
I mean, the way they freak out over the balloon.
Am I still freezing really bad? I feel like I'm trying to watch it on the
a little bit, but not as much.
I'm sorry, you guys. I don't know what's going on.
It's looking good right now.
I want to say one thing. I want to say one thing about Scott Ritter. I don't know if he is guilty of what he's been accused of. What I do know is that it had nothing to do with pedophilia, the charges against him. So let's stop perpetuating that. And also, I think people need to go. He has a blog post out on his Substack where he goes into the situation and what it entailed. And what I know about the military industrial complex and the intelligence community is that they will try to destroy anybody who stands against them. So I'm always skeptical of somebody like Scott Ritter, who has charges like this brought against against him. I'm always very skeptical about the validity of those charges because we've seen what they're doing to Julian Assange. This is not the first time that they've done something like this. They will destroy your life in whatever way that they can. And so I think that it's okay to ask questions about Scott Ritter's history. He's addressed them many times in the past. I think that that's perfectly fine. I'm not asking him to babysit my kids. I'm asking him to give a speech where he holds, a very valuable perspective, in my opinion, on this topic. So I get it. If people are, have questions or concerns about him attending, I think that that's perfectly fine. I think that he would agree with that. But I think that you need to be very skeptical and think a little bit deeper on who he is, what he's done, and why they might be trying to destroy his life in that way. And again, I'm not asking him to babysit my kids. I'm just going to a rally where he's attending and speaking. So
it's funny. You're saying this. Somebody said on a thread, I would totally let him babysit my kids. Like somebody said that. I was like, okay.
No, I mean, and I don't know him personally. I've met him at the Assange stuff. I don't know him personally. I mean, he might be a lovely guy. He's got kids of his own. I mean, I'm not making it's not about his personality or
you're freezing again. Misty, you're freezing again. Misty, you're freezing again completely. That whole soliloquy we missed. It's Misty's having issues today with the computer. Let's let her get that straightened out. Damn. And yeah, just great words from Misty Winston, who's going to be at the event. I hope. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Misty. Guys, sorry. I don't know him either, and I'm not no judge. I'm no jury. But I do know after reading his speech what dire straits we are in when it comes to nuclear war, and people don't understand that. And yeah, I encourage you to read it. Let's get on with the show today. I wanted to show some videos that Misty is putting up, so I'm going to wait for that section. The hashtag Free Your Dad. Assange is still imprisoned. But let's bring some stuff up over there because the warmongers are still warmongering, and there is a movement of sorts to hopefully push back against it. That's what this whole thing was supposed to be about with this Rage Against the War Machine, was to push back against every single part of it. Well, one big part of it, of the war machine, is the media, okay? The media is the vessel in which they get to push and propagate their lies. They get to manufacture consent for war. One of the reasons that when Bernie Sanders was running in 2020, the reasons why I was so dead set against him and why I went to Tulsi Gabbard, and I'm sure you have your opinions about Tulsi Gabbard, so I'm sure I am very, what's the word I'm looking? At odds in certain areas when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard. I've said it before. I feel like she's completely abandoned her post of sorts, but she's done some work in the past, which I think lends credit to why she'll be speaking this February 19th. And don't get me wrong, if anybody wanted to speak at this war rally, I would let them. Anybody who's coming and shining a light on this message, even if it's hypocritical, right? You know what I'm saying? And you think it's hypocritical. I mean, if Donald Trump wanted to come speak at this freaking rally, go speak. I don't think he's gonna, don't get me wrong. And I don't think the guy's anti-war at all, but it's the message that's so important. Tulsi did speak about one of the last treaties that expired for nuclear proliferation. And she was one of the only voices in Congress before she left speaking up against it, mentioning the doomsday clock. And that alone allows her, in my mind, brings merit to what we're speaking about right now. So she will also be speaking. But why I went to Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie Sanders is because Bernie Sanders' foreign policy was always questionable. Bernie Sanders, when it came to what happened to Kosovo and that whole situation, when he was pretty much greenlit it and he wasn't speaking out against it, that was when I started questioning stuff. And you can see him now with the whole Putin this and Putin that, Putinesca. That's my favorite pasta. But without the anchovies, because you got to do vegan, just olives, onions, capers, red sauce, a nice Putinesca. But he hired this dude, Matt Duss. And Matt Duss made it a point to let everybody know that Tulsi Gabbard was not part of Bernie Sanders' foreign policy ideology anymore, that he was taking the reins on the whole situation. But the only problem is he comes from the Center for American Progress. And earlier, about a year ago, I think it was, when he did a whole show with Brianna Joy Gray, who is obviously still getting caught up on the foreign policy aspect. And I think she's progressed definitely on the whole situation. But he went on the show and he had carte blanche to say what he wanted to say. And this dude was propagating war left and right, telling just lies that are, that whole thing that if you continue to tell the lie over and over again, it sticks. Well, he would constantly tell the lie that Putin invaded, Ukraine, of like unmerited, unprovoked whatsoever. And I think that's just ridiculous. In other words, he's just telling only one part of the story. Yes, Putin and the Russian Federation went into Ukraine, but it was far from being unprovoked. Now, you want to argue that he should have done it, he should have done it, he shouldn't have done it. That's fine. Okay, I'll have that disagreement with you, and we'll have that conversation, because I know who else didn't want war. That's the people of Donbass that were bombed for 8 years straight before Russia did get involved. And these are the ethnic-speaking Russians getting bombed by Nazis. Yeah, that's right, Nazis. But anyways, part of that whole apparatus was this guy, Matt Duss. I'm going to bring him on up. And anyways, let's just take a look at his video of he was on Democracy Now! And let's take a quick look at what he had to say.
Matt Duss, your assessment of U.S. policy when it comes to Ukraine.
I think actually the president's, version of it there, it tracks with the facts. I think the administration, as my colleague Stephen and I wrote in the piece that you referenced, the way the president has helped manage alliances and partnerships in response to Russia's invasion of last February, I think has been impressive. I think it shows a way of practicing U.S. leadership that forges consensus and then mobilizes that consensus. The war obviously is devastating. It is ongoing. We would like to see the war end as soon as possible, but I think being realistic about when that is possible is part of the challenge we face right now. I think Putin has given no evidence whatsoever that he's interested in a workable resolution of this conflict. I think he and the Russians and the Ukrainians at this point both seem to believe that they can continue to achieve their goals through military means. So for the time being, I think the administration's theory of the case is sound, which is that they'll continue to support Ukraine's defense to create the best possible moment or the best possible environment for negotiations when that becomes possible.
I hope it wasn't echoing. Was it echoing? Yeah, good old sus dus, says Ware Pilgrim, sorry, my bad. Yeah, this is the guy that Bernie Sanders chose, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, is this progressive? Is this leftist? It's American left, because the American left now seems to be bigger warmongers than the right. Literally. But this is the guy he chose. You see how suspect he is? Center for American Project, right? That's what's her name? Nina Tanden. I didn't say her name right. Nina Tanden. These guys are warmongers, right? Like Nira Tanden literally says that we should take the oil from Libya for compensation for bombing them because we need to get paid somehow. These are nation builders of sorts right there. And Matt Duss, just more of the same and still pushing the whole thing. How can you think for a second that it's progressive when you have the guy who was the number one foreign policy advisor to Bernie Sanders giving advice and propping up and supporting Joe Biden's foreign policy? Joe Biden, who wanted to go in and gave permission to George Bush, that he pretty much wrestled up the Senate to make sure that George W. Bush can have that war in Iraq. The dude's been for every single war. and Council for Foreign Relations, where we hold the thing in Burisma in Ukraine. It's sick, and this is who the dude is supporting. That's Matt Duss. Guys, I'm going to engineer the show as we go along. Please remember, if you want to help out, you can always help out the Convo Couch. Guys, we did a show yesterday. We are getting geared up and ready to go to Cuba. So givesendgo.com/theconvo in Cuba. Remember, we are completely powered and funded by you, the people. Hoo-ah! To hell to corporate sponsorship, to hell to any of that sponsorship. We're not going to be told what we're going to say. You're going to tell us what to say. Kind of like, no, but you know what I'm saying? You'll give us the power to bring you the truth. So please do us a favor, hit the like button, hit the share button. Got some people hanging on out at Rockfin over there. Gregory Walker Pasta, check the mail for a package. Wait a second. Hold on a second. You want me to check a package from you, Gregory? And don't eat anything. It's for grown-ups only. Also, MCSE needs to get the band back together. That's Gregory Walker. We love you, G-Money. Steelers fan in the house. Definitely. Thank you. We'll keep an eye out for that package. Guys, over on Rumble, please share the stream. What's up, Fred? Fred Edward, my boy. Hopefully, Vicky Lynn. Where's Vicky Lynn at? Is she not there? Is she late? Ronnie132. All those cool people over there. Beauty and the Boomers. Fams, hit the like button, hit the share button. Do us that favor. 29 people watching over there on this Freaky Friday. Got 3 platforms going. People across the board. We love you. We care for you. Thank you so much for putting us into play. Remember, you guys fund us, not the corporations. And that's what we do appreciate about this show. Cam Schwari, Kate, how you doing over there? And Jilly Love. Anybody else? Hugo. A lot of fun people hanging on out. We love you. All right. So we got that going. Let's go to the next part. While we're Warmongers be Warmongering is the name of this section. Next part. Anthony Blinken, right? Man, this is just crazy. This guy, right? This guy. Talk about warmonger. Does anybody remember the little
Matt Duss, your assessment of U.S.
the Warmongers patty cake he played with Lindsey Graham when he was getting sworn in? If that didn't tell you what you need to know, then nothing will. Well, you know, there's a crazy earthquake that took place over there and in Turkey and Syria, and there's a lot of shit that's going on. No aid is getting in there because of the sanctions and the blockade of sorts, and they're really suffering. The United States expresses our deepest condolences. Are we up? Okay, we're up. Beautiful. Let me go to this one right here. All right. Thank you, guys. The United States expresses our deepest condolences for the tragic loss of life in Turkey and Syria from today's earthquakes. Our initial assistance response to allied Turkey is underway, and we stand ready to provide aid directly to the Syrian people. Okay? Now he says directly to the Syrian people. And look what Misty says, drop the sanctions. Now, that is code over there. When he says we are ready to provide aid directly to the Syrian people, what he's trying to say is that he's going to ignore the government. He's not going to work with the government. Now, we understand the best way for aid to take place and to get it into the hands that need it most, to get the help that they need, would be to work with the government. Right now is one of those times, just like Rage Against the War Machine. We put aside our differences for a bigger goal. Well, if the United States was really sincere and cared, they would put aside their differences with the Assad government and work with them to get aid directly to the people. That's not what they're doing. Unfortunately, they are just trying to say we're going to work directly with the Syrian people by working with NGOs like the White Helmets that were already thrown out of the country. So I want to play this clip. We played this on, I think I played it both on the Convo Couch the other day. We played it on AM Wake Up. So Ned Price is asked directly, hey, man, why don't you open up Syria? Why don't you just, work directly with the government? Why don't you lift the sanctions? You can see right here, it says, let me make it a little bit bigger. I'm sorry, guys. My bad. That should help. The earthquake again shows U.S. cares more about regime change in Syria than Syria's people. And that's something when we talk about the war machine, we can't just acknowledge actual active wars or the nuclear bomb situation that we need to de-escalate. We also got to recognize and point out and expose the regime change operation. That's what this is all about. At the end of the day, when you speak to a lot of Congress critters, as Steve likes to call them, and people in Congress are lawmakers, they'll tell you that the goal for the Ukraine-Russia conflict is regime change in Moscow, because they don't like that government. So rather work with it, they want to change it. February 6th, question, why don't you reach out to the Syrian government and lift the sanctions that have suffocated Syria? Ned Price regurgitates the same old lies about Syria. Take a look, guys.
In Turkey, we have a partner in the government. In Syria, we have a partner in the form of NGOs on the ground who are providing humanitarian support.
Well, let me just follow up on this, because the Syrian government, as far as I know, it's a government that you still recognize. You have never unrecognized the Syrian government. So why not reach out to the Syrian government? They are in power. They're the ones that run these rescue operations or aid operations and so on. It would be a great gesture. Another gesture would be to sort of lift the sanctions that have basically, suffocated Syria.
Saeed, and I'm going to resist the temptation to go into your advocacy rather than questioning, but I will make the point that it would be quite ironic, if not even counterproductive, for us to reach out to a government that has brutalized its people over the course of a dozen years now, gassing them, slaughtering them, being responsible for much of the suffering that they've endured. Instead, we have humanitarian partners on the ground who can provide the type of assistance in the aftermath of these tragic earthquakes, but these humanitarian partners who have been active on the ground since the earliest days of the Civil War. This is a regime, Saeed, that has never shown any inclination to put the welfare, the well-being, the interests of its people first. Now that its people are suffering even more, we're going to continue doing what has proven effective over the course of the past dozen years or so, providing significant amounts of humanitarian assistance to partners on the ground. These partners who, unlike the Syrian regime, are there to help the people rather than brutalize them.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies, right? The same lie. This is a regime that's brutal and awful to its people. It's gassed its own people. We're not going to do that. We're going to be still working with their NGOs. We said this before. There are some NGOs that are good NGOs, where we know that, but very rare. The NGOs that work with the United States on a regular basis, especially when it comes to regime change, are the same NGOs that were started around the whole what was it, the Reagan Contra Iran, the Iran Contra scandal, when the CIA was backdooring selling crack cocaine on the streets of New York and the streets in LA. Freeway Rick Ross, that crack and everything spread to everywhere, ruined communities, ruined lives, okay? And once again, I'll say this too as well, with the same thing with the fight for fentanyl. That's a problem we have in house. Big pharma and doctors created addicts for that stuff to be sold to. But anyways, those groups, once they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and Oliver North and all these other people had to come forth and say, yeah, we were doing this and we doing that. The United States got clever. What they did was they created these NGOs like the National Endowment for Democracy, like the OAS, the Organization of American States, in which they fund with your taxpayer dollar to help their regime change operations and manufacture consent via these NGOs and using the media. So in other words, they make it look like it's a cause. Like we have to go into these countries like Syria, where we have brutal dictators like Assad, and we have to aid the people, and we have to aid the people who want to take control. But yet they're aiding and they're abetting the craziest people like ISIS. What they did, and you can go see Max's book, The Management of Savagery. We had on Mark Slapota on this show. At one point, the war machine was aiding and abetting and funding and militarizing every single faction of the country against Assad, different groups and whatnot. They're literally causing chaos. This group, that group, the Kurds, ISIS, you know what I'm saying? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The United States apparatus, the empire, the West, doesn't care if we win the war, doesn't care if we lose the war. They only care if we have the war. And that's the most important thing. So that's what he's talking about, these NGOs. He's talking about the white helmets in this case, too, as well. When they were already left and thrown out of the country, now they're back in. Here comes the white helmets. The old band is getting back together. A lot of the things that scene that's going on with foreign policy when these guys got back in under the Biden administrations, the Antony Blinkens, the Ned Prices, the John Kirbys, the Victoria Nulands, seemed to start back all these old things that were going on around. Okay, so things might have calmed down as far as like the United States pushing the Ukrainians and Zelensky and what to do more, right? Like there was that whole argument, like why they tried to impeach Trump. I'm going to withhold aid and military aid if you don't tell me what's going on, right? And they made a whole debacle out of that. And meanwhile, the whole time they're funding this whole freaking craziness. Well, all this stuff came back into play with Biden. Now, here come the white helmets again. And we're going to be talking to Vanessa Beeley probably on both shows soon because she's in Syria and things have been going in and out over there to get a little bit more information about this on how that's taking place. Because now with the white helmets coming back in, they seem like they're going to look for an opportunity to further press back against the Assad regime, as like they like to call them, which is the Assad government, the elected government, and try to get a hold again. So I can see more death and destruction taking place in Syria. And remember, when Donald Trump was the president, he didn't pull out our troops. We took the oil. We stole the oil. It's better that we get it instead of ISIS. And we spent all this money. I mean, that was always, his logic was always kind of crazy. Why didn't they take the oil? It's not your friggin' oil. And the United States has not stopped. They have not stopped looting Syria. They were already in a bad position where they were stealing their energy, where they were stealing their natural resources. We saw this. Loads and loads of trucks lined up to steal the resources and take them out of the country. Tell me the war machine doesn't propagate death and destruction. Sanctions. Sanctions are an act of war. That was said by Mike Gravel on Jimmy Dore's show once before, and I've never stopped repeating it. Sanctions are an act of war. It's a way of suffocating a country, like Cuba with sanctions and a blockade, like Syria with sanctions. I mean, it's terrible. These people are starving. These people are dying. We are stealing their resources, and we're suffocating them. That's when I say we, that's our government. And I get it if you didn't elect them, but let's take some accountability and call these assholes out. Ned Price, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so here's another scary thing. One of my favorite writers over there, you know I love Kyle Anzalone. You know I love me some Connor Freeman. You know I love me some Dave DeCamp, right? Dave DeCamp is just, man, this guy was on Russell Brand the other day. We could start calling this guy the GOAT soon. But if you haven't gone over to antiwar.com, this is Scott Horton's outlet. He does an amazing job too as well. I'll disagree with Scott in certain things, but this outlet right over here, Anti-War, is being used more and more every day, and it deserves it because it really provides some light and information. Look at this latest article right over here. If this doesn't scare the bejesus out of you, I don't know what will. Ukraine prepared to strike Crimea with British missiles. Ukraine prepared to strike Crimea with British missiles. Ukraine is in discussions with the UK about receiving longer-range missiles and is prepared to use them against Crimea, which would mark another major escalation of Western involvement in the war, the Times of London reported on Thursday. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who you saw him clapping for Zelensky, smiling as he came in, promised more aid for Kiev when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Green Screen Koki Smurf Zelensky visited London on Wednesday. The Times report said the discussions are now underway and whether future aid should include Harpoon anti-ship missiles or air-launched Storm Shadow missiles. Ukrainian sources told the Times that they would plan to use those missiles to hit Crimea, strikes that would seriously risk provoking Moscow. But both the U.S. and Britain are less concerned about escalating the war. Ukraine has already received some Harpoon missiles from Denmark and launchers from the U.S. The anti-ship missiles have long range, about 70 miles, although variants can hit targets over 100 miles. The Harpoons have a longer range than artillery missiles the U.S. has sent, but the Harpoons are designed for coastal defense. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but that's some scary stuff right there. That really is. And they even said this is what they plan to use them for. So more scary times. Now, I know that there's some people out there who've been saying too as well that Donald Trump is the most anti-war president of all time. Like literally some people said that the other day, right? Like, nope, he's the most anti-war president of all time. The Republicans, the populist Republicans in in Congress, they're planning to end the war. They want to end the Ukraine war. Now, this is what's going on. I don't know if you've heard this, but Matt Gaetz has floated a resolution. A resolution, guys. This is not a bill. This is not something this is a resolution, meaning it's just an idea, a symbolic idea, a gesture. That's what a resolution is, right? But this is what's being pushed. And credit where credit's due. This is what Matt Gaetz is doing. But I think people need to understand that this is a resolution and say, Matt, it's a resolution. Stop. It's like a Green New Deal. It's a resolution. It's not action. It's ideology. It's thought. It's it. Matt Gaetz introduced a resolution on Thursday that calls for the immediate end to the U.S. military and financial support for the Ukraine and urges the warring sides to negotiate a ceasefire. The Ukrainian fatigue resolution. Death, who were fatigued by it, was led by Gaetz and received 10 other co-sponsors. If passed, it would express that it is a sense of the House that the United States must end its military financial aid to Ukraine and urges all combatants to reach a peace agreement. Throughout the war, Gaetz has been critical of U.S. support for Ukraine and has previously called for an end to the policy. President Joe Biden must have forgotten his prediction from March 2022, suggesting that arming Ukraine with military equipment will escalate the conflict to World War III, Gaetz said in a statement in a resolution. So I wanna do it like, ladies and gentlemen, that's World War III. You hear me? We arm them. That's World War III. Yeah, but it hasn't stopped them. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's better than other. They're going to play the lesser of two evil game like they always do. This is how they justify voting for Democrats a lot of time, the lesser of two evils. Now it seems on the war front that the lesser of the two evils is the Republicans. But I remember Iraq. I remember what happened. I remember who the preemptive, we got to bomb them over there, so we ain't got to bomb them over here party was. It was the Republicans. And they just take turns doing this shit. At that time, with the preemptive strikes and the warmongering going crazy and everything that was exposed from the money wasted and Halliburton charging the military $12 for a can of Coke, right? So therefore, they can just money hand over fist because the government has to pay all those bills. Just nuts. And they were so crazy that you were like, oh, man, I'm voting for Democrat no matter what. Because these guys were so crazy. They were nuts. So I'm going to vote for Democrats. Now, what are they doing right now? The Democrats, they're batshit crazy. These culture wars, what the hell are they doing? Oh, my God, go vote for Republicans. That's how they keep you in the two-party duopoly, ladies and gentlemen. And the thing to understand over here is that, yeah, Matt Gaetz is floating a resolution. Well, you know, I talked about a resolution being a resolution. It's not actual law. It's just an idea. But it's a resolution. But what happens when they end their war with Ukraine? Where does that money go? Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking about this the whole time. And a guy I kind of like, where that's what they do, right? They get you on one issue. For those out there who were all about the COVID standards, right? Who were all about, I'm not taking this shot. I'm not doing this. I think everything that's going around me is bullshit. There were some independent media or some populist right media like Bannon who were there, who were having the doctors on, who were having the FLCC on. They completely gained your trust by saying, look what's going on. But then what do? Once they gain your trust on this one issue, they pivot you to where they want to take you on another issue. And that issue, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, is war with China, right? So after the Congress voted 419 to 0 to condemn China for its surveillance flight balloon, after that, Holly starts pushing for shit inside the Senate. Take a look. I'm going to play this one from the beginning. Guys, do us a favor. Convo couch here. I'm doing Han Solo. I lost everybody's leaving pasta today. I lost everybody. Take a look. Josh Hawley pushing war with China.
brief it was in his speech today. Do you think the president's mention of China, however brief it was in his speech today? Do you think
I thought it was totally inadequate. I mean, he said almost nothing, no specific talk or acknowledgement of the balloon espionage incident, no plan to counter it, and no acknowledgement that he's been incredibly weak on China. I mean, how is it that China was allowed to fly this tool of espionage across the continental United States, including the state of Missouri, and his administration did nothing about it? They would have kept the whole thing a secret if the Billings paper hadn't ruined it by publishing photos. So, I mean, this is a guy who's in total denial. And by the way, they still haven't leveled with the American people or senators for that matter.
I know that Southwest's operational disruption during the last week of December has.
Sorry about that. Yeah. How can we let China float this balloon, this surveillance balloon over this stuff like this? This is just terrible. It's awful. Hey, Josh, how are we allowed to have 400 bases around China and that's okay? 400 bases around that. Can you imagine, right? So right now, the United States Navy is going in the South China Sea. They're aircraft carriers, vessels all over the place, probably got a ton of submarines. Can you imagine if China boated, what's the word? Drove? Sailed, thank you. An aircraft carrier between Cuba and the United States? Forget about it. They would flip their lid. I mean, look what happened to the Cuban Missile Crisis. But anyways, that's that. And also the fact that we want to just kind of put this on Joe Biden, that keeps you in the team sports mentality, left team versus right team, blue team versus red team, right? It keeps you, it's Joe Biden. What happened to the 3 times the balloons were there when Trump was in the administration, right? Crazy stuff, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to end the show right there and stuff like that. If you can help us to get to the Rage Against the War Machine rally on the 19th, please do so. My Venmo is up at Craig Jardula, and my Cash App is there at $ Pasta Jardula. So, guys, do us a favor. Hit the like button, hit the share button. The best thing you can do to the show. Thank you, Misty Winston, for getting on for as long as you could. We had technical problems, but we'll see you soon. That's it for today, guys. We love you. I'll see you back on Monday with Fiorella. Got some great guests next week. Cavo out. Peace. We'll see you.